Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia. This is the summary for the day of 759 for the 23rd of March. We're going to start off with Frontline changes report, and there's a lot because the Russia has launched or increased the tempo or increased the intensity of their offensive across multiple front lines, and it looks like Russia is pissed. Anyway, we're going to start off with Avdiivka. Over at the Bakhmut Front, there is a various frontline change. The Russian forces have made significant progress over in the north of Ivaniske, as well as in the north of Klishchiivka. So over in the Avdiivka region along the highway towards Chasiv, the Russian forces have been geolocated along the tree line. They have actually progressed down the tree line and effectively have expanded their control towards Chasiv. The first settlement around here, this is also known as the Canal, a canal micro district, or also known as the Novoye. So they are now getting very close to this small little district of Chasiv, and the fighting is now definitely heading towards that direction. And the other in the south, there over just north of Ivaniske, the Russian forces have also taken this entire area here. This is based on Ukrainian mapping. Ukrainians have not acknowledged the Russian control of the northern part of Ivaniske. So this is just invalidation or the disclaimer from the Ukrainian side of this area here of Ivaniske. I think it won't be long. I think tomorrow we're going to see Ukrainians giving up the entire northern part in their mapping, because there's no way the Ukrainian forces are able to hold any positions in this area over here. As the Russians are pushing in the north along the ridge line that is overlooking Ivaniske. And over in the north of Klishchiivka, there is also a geolocation. This is Klishchiivka itself. And in the north, there is a geolocation of Russian forces at the end of this tree or this forest line. And the fact that they are here means that the Russian forces have retaken the entire forest again. And this is going to complicate Ukraine's defenses. And this, in the whole, if you look at the entire frontline changes, the Russians are now on a major offensive. It seems they have started since not only yesterday, but the day before yesterday. It seems like this is a new offensive, and I usually call this Bakhmut offensive, but no, at this rate we might as well just call it Chasiv offensive. But tentatively, I'm still calling this Bakhmut offensive because this is the Bakhmut Front according to DPA's terminology. So we shall continue to monitor. But I think if you watch other reports or other channels, they may call this the Chasiv offensive. But we shall see how this goes. So moving on away from this frontline changes, we go into Avdiivka Front. So at the Avdiivka Front, there is also frontline changes over in the Avdiivka Front. This is Avdiivka city. There's major development over towards Semenivka in the north of Tonenke as well as south of Tonenke. So this is the frontline changes. Over at Semenivka, Russian forces have punched out. Let me zoom in a bit. Punched out of Avdiivka, as well as continue to put pressure from the east of Semenivka, and they're basically now just across the lake from Semenivka itself. Ukrainian forces are holding Semenivka as this final line of defense before they have to fall back to a next line of defense. So I predict that there's going to be some fierce battle around here, as the Ukrainian forces is likely to continue to send in important reinforcement to hold the line, because falling back further is going to look really ugly. Moving on from the south, at Tonenke region, Russian forces have been geolocated at this junction of tree line, or rather here, in an attack in this area here. And the fact that they are geolocated here means that they have basically captured the entire tree line. So the Russian forces have taken this tree line. And in the south, a similar situation is happening. The Russian forces, according to the Ukrainian mapping, have taken the entire 2 tree lines in the south of Tonenke. So this marks the continuation of Russians' expansion at Tonenke. And over at the Avdiivka Front, it looks like the Ukrainian forces is starting to falter again, starting to struggle to hold back the Russians again, because this is a accumulation of multiple frontline changes over at Ternenke. The entire line at Ternenke has collapsed. The next line of defense will be at Umansky, Zaporizhzhia, as well as Netelove. So we shall continue to monitor and see how this progress. And other frontline change is over at the Donetsk Front, over at Krasnohorivka. So at Krasnohorivka, there is a airstrike reported in this southern district. So this airstrike, too many colors. This airstrike means that the Ukrainian forces have actually retaken this part, or at least it invalidates the Russian claims that the Russians have taken this part of the district or the neighborhood of the south of Krasnohorivka. And however, for Ukrainian mapping, they have disclaimed this area here. Based on Ukrainian mapping, they have considered that the entire road is now under Russian control. So the front line probably currently looks like this, with the Russian forces continue to try to push in and to strengthen their foothold while the Ukrainian forces are counter-attacking to make sure that the Russians are getting pushed out of Krasnohorivka. So, and the last frontline change is over at Staromaiorske. It's over at the Donetsk Front as well. In the other end of the Donetsk Front, there is just some small changes over on the western part of Krasnohorivka, where the Ukrainian mapping considered that the Russians have taken these three lines, which means that it's a capture on the western part of Krasnohorivka, as the Russian forces is currently pushing in the west of Staromaiorske. Sorry, it's not Krasnohorivka. Staromaiorske, as the Russian forces are pushing towards Staromaiorske from the west. So we will continue to monitor and see how this develops. And that's all for the frontline changes report. So sorry. And we move on to the strategic and tactical reporting. First thing first, Russia have launched massive missile strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, they reported that they hit the facility of electrical power industry, gas industry, as well as assembly and testing site for uncrewed boats. So, and as a result, they have so-called successfully destroyed their targets, according to what they say. And the Ukrainians, however, also launched their own missile strikes. Their target instead is actually on Crimea, particularly on Sevastopol. There is most of the missiles are going towards Sevastopol. Some of them actually went for the air base. So this Sevastopol is one of the main targets, and then there's also hitting the air base north of Simferopol. So according to the Russians, there is, of course, footages coming out from Sevastopol showing some big explosion. Russians claim that it hit some civilian buildings, but not sure. I also don't care. It doesn't change anything. So that's all for the missile strikes. Over in the southern front, at the Kherson Front, Krinky has popped up again. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, they said that the Russians carry out an attack on the settlement of Krinky. So this confirms the Ukrainians are still at Krinky, and so Krinky holds, and the story of Krinky continue, the cringiest story in history. And over on the northern bank, there is multiple strikes. Russian Defense Ministry reported shelling at Tyahinka as well as at Avdiivka, and there is geolocation of Lancet strike on a M777 howitzer. So in the area north of Ponyativka, in this area here. So this is where the hit came from, and I think that's all. There's one more over on further away, at Havrilivka. Actually, it's Garivlivka. So the Russian Defense Ministry also reported about the shelling over at this position. So this is just some strikes by the Russians. And we move on to the Zaporizhzhia Front. And for those that are still watching, do press the like button, subscribe. My YouTube partner manager said that I need to change the screen, to make it look more, it's like, oops, subscribe, press the like button. So yeah, so hope that works. And over at the Zaporizhzhia Front, there is only fighting being reported at Robotine. Deep State actually also mentioned Verbove, but it's a bit weird. They say southwest, and southwest, at least based on the auto translation. So they can't possibly be southwest. So yeah, so I didn't indicate, but the Russians are actually putting pressure on Robotine still, and fighting is very, very slow right now in this Zaporizhzhia Front. There's nothing. There's only one more, which is a fire mission on Pyatikaki, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. And that's about it in terms of the Zaporizhzhia Front. There's nothing really significant happening around this front line. And over at the Donetsk Front, so this is the Donetsk Front and Velika Novosilka sector, Voleda sector, Marinka sector. And over this area here, Russian forces are attacking Staromaiorske, as you probably know from the Frontline Changes report. The fighting over the Voleda region is no longer reported. And the Russians are now putting pressure on Novo-Mikhailivka, fighting in the north, fighting towards Konstantinivka, at Bobeda, at Georgievka, as well as Krasnohorivka, with Ukrainian forces counter-attacking at Krasnohorivka. The detailed information about Krasnohorivka I already covered through the Frontline Changes report, so I'm not going to rehash again. Otherwise, there's not much other stuff. From here, we can see that the Russians are making this push out of the Marinka sector. Seems to be the main push at this front line. Yeah, it's going to take a long time, so we shall see how this goes. If it's for me, I would never pick here. I'll probably go in this direction towards Constantinople. But that's me. That clearly I'm not a general for a reason. Over at the Donetsk Front, not at the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, the Russian forces are now on the offensive at the Avdiivka Front again. Ukrainian counteroffensive is limited to Bedaichi, Tonenke, as well as Prvomaiske. This is probably limited counterattack against the Russian offensive, while the Russians are now making the main push over at Bedaichi, Semenivka, Olivka, Tonenke, Prvomaiske, as well as Nevelske. So the Russians are now on the main offensive in this area here. We will continue to monitor in terms of the situation. For Tonenke, as I mentioned before, the Russians are now pushing in this direction, and the first target might actually be Umanske, with the Russian forces pushing northward, cutting the road between Olivka and Umanske. I think this makes a lot of sense. And they are also probably looking at cutting the rear of Prvomaiske, where the Ukrainians are holding a very, very strong defense around this area here. So the Russians are pushing and putting pressure at Prvomaiske, keeping the Ukrainian forces engaged, while I think this push towards the rear, towards Netelove, is going to collapse this front line around here, moving the front line to Netelove. So this is currently happening. Further up north, at the Semenivka and Bedaichi region, Ukrainian forces continue to hold a very strong line at Bedaichi. The Russians have no idea how to break through this area. However, they are able to reach basically the edge of Semenivka, and it looks like the line north of Olivka has fallen. Ukrainian forces have to hold the line of Semenivka because the next line is actually pretty far away, over at this Solovyove, Novoporovske, as well as Novoselivska Prussia. So the next front line is pretty far away, and if they lose this, we might see a huge quick withdrawal into other regions, and then I don't think I'm not sure. Of course, maybe the three lines can do good defenses, but let's see how this progresses, because Russia might be transiting to a totally new way of fighting. They are now building 3,000 kilogram bombs for their glide bombs, and it's going to be crazy, because footages from a 1,500 is already big enough. A 3,000 I cannot even imagine. So yeah, I mean, if the Russians continue to develop into this doctrine that is more closer to how the Western style of fight with air superiority, where in the West, I think the NATO forces like to just airstrike all the positions before the ground forces push in, and then if Russians deploy this method, I think the line will collapse pretty fast, because artillery is not that accurate. TOS-1A is not bad, but but the TOS-1A problem is they need to go rather near to the front line to fire. If with fighter jets and fighter bombers, they can actually destroy the defense line very, very quickly, which is also why maneuver warfare is a thing. Everybody's talking about maneuver warfare. Everybody's surprised by trench warfare, because in today's age, setting a trench, you die really quickly. So it is very surprising, in this war that we still see so much trenches, and apparently they still works, in a way, to slow down the enemy, but is at the cost of a lot of lives. So otherwise, we move on to the New York Front. At the New York Front, the Ukrainian forces are attacking at Sumy as well as New York. So that's about it. We do not have any other information about this situation around here. We move into the Bakhmut Front. So at the Bakhmut Front, in the southern flank, the Russian forces are attacking at Klishchiivka, in the southwest of Klishchiivka, and at Kupyansk. The Russians are also pushing the north of Klishchiivka, which we know through geolocation. There is a Lancet strike on the IFV, infantry fighting vehicle, southwest of Klishchiivka. So this situation continues. The only main significance is that the Russians are now flanking in the north. Again, Klishchiivka, you need to take this line, this ridge line, on the western part of Klishchiivka in order to capture Klishchiivka, because that's the high ground. So we shall see how this progress, whether the Russians can actually break through. The last time they tried this, it ended really badly. So we shall see how this goes. And in the northern flank of the Bakhmut Front, the Russian forces are attacking in the area of Bogdanivka, along the highway towards Chasiv in the south of that highway, in the north of Ivanyivske, at Ivanyivske, and southwest of Ivanyivske. So this is rather significant, and this is actually yet another major push, and the aim is now Chasiv. They are trying to go to Chasiv, and personally, I would never go for that. If you give me a choice, but if the Russians want to hit a wall, they can go ahead. Personally, I don't think there's a point to doing that. But anyway, so Ivanyivske situation, we still do not have corroboration of Russian forces taking the entire of Ivanyivske. Even information coming from Ryba says that the information is actually that the Russians are still mopping up the settlement. They still do not have 100% firm control of the settlement yet. They are still clearing the village, and based on Ukrainian mapping, this area here is still a gray zone. So we will continue to monitor. But however, based on Ryba's information, they are claiming that the Russian forces is now attacking into the forest around here, heading in the direction of Stuposhki. So we will see how this progress. Ukrainians tend to fight very well in the forest. So we shall see how this works out in this time. Because the Russians' furthest point actually reached the canal. At this very point, this is where they go the furthest during the Wagner's time, the Wagner era. So let's see how the Russians fare without the Wagner. In the northern flank, Russian forces, of course, as I mentioned, taken this tree line, and they are heading down the railway line towards Novoye. So, and the Russians are continuing to make this push, and of course they are also pushing in this ridge line north of Ivanyivske. So we will probably see the first battle of the outskirts of Chasiv very soon. But I probably will just call this a separate thing. This Novoye or canal. We shall see how this progress. And moving on to the Siversk Front. At the Siversk Front, the Russian forces are continue to attack at Rozdolivka and Vasily, as well as Belgorod in the Luhansk region. Information coming from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, we will continue to monitor. Now, we don't have any information about all these things. What is the details in terms of this area here. And moving on, over at the Kreminna Front, we have the first report of fighting within Staromaiorske forestry, according to Deep State UA, as they mentioned in the Staromaiorske forestry. This is the first time in a long time. So the last report was actually in 11th February. So we haven't seen fighting in the Staromaiorske forestry for 1.5 months. So the Russians are now making push again. And as usual, the fighting at Yampolivka and Terny continues, with the Russian continue to push in that area. And that's all from the Kreminna Front. And further up north, nothing at the Svatove. We move into the Kupyansk Front. At the Kupyansk Front, The fighting at Avdiivka as well as Krasnohorivka is not reported anymore. There's nothing at Timkovka as well. Suddenly this attack is gone, so it's a probing attack. So the only fighting is now being reported is at Sinkivka. There's no Ukrainian counterattack being reported, so that's about it in the Kupyansk. And over in the Belgorod Front, there is multiple reports. Russian Defense Ministry reported shelling at Potikonove, as well as over at Badaki or near Badaki at Zemlyanki. So this is the two areas here that the Russians have shelled. Not sure what they use, but this is based on the Russian Defense Ministry's report. So let me zoom out again. So that's these two areas here, and there's also shelling being reported over at Losivka. This one is Russian artillery hitting some positions south of Voschansk, which is over here. So this is just the Russians continue to shell away or hit away at the Ukrainian forces that have gathered around at the border, so to prevent another incursion into the Belgorod region. So the Belgorod offensive is entirely over. There's no more Ukrainian attack into the Belgorod border, and that's about it in terms of this. So there's nothing else over in the Chernihiv and Sumy region, and that's about it for the front line for the SITREP. So that's it. So I also gone into details in terms of the various front line, so I'm not going to do any conclusions this time around, since I already go very detailed in some of these frontline reports or the SITREP. So anyway, thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. Yeah, so do share. I think the most important thing is to share. Sharing helps to reach more people and help to reach new people. And yeah, because YouTube algorithm isn't really pushing the channel very much, so there's nothing much I can do about it. So that's about it. I'll see you guys in the next update.